You can almost feel the cold air of Montana's wilderness, sharp, clean, and endless. In the summer of 1983, 5 college friends vanished during a weekend camping trip near Glacier National Park. They were young, loud, full of plans, and gone before sunrise. Their tents remained. Their gear was still there, even their campfire still warm. For 25 years, not a single clue surfaced. No bones, no prints, no sign of struggle. Until one stormy afternoon, a sinkhole opened beneath the very same forest trail, revealing a buried wooden structure. Inside, investigators found something impossible: a cabin. Built by human hands, and dated exactly 1983. The strangest part? It was fully furnished, and 5 chairs were waiting at the table. If this happened near your hometown, what would you believe? Comment your country, and let's begin. You can still hear the laughter if you listen long enough. 5 voices carried through the Montana wilderness, bright, young, echoing off the pines. It was June of 1983 when they set out. Ryan Cooper, 21, studying forestry at the University of Montana. His best friend Caleb Ross, 20, loud, reckless. Megan Taylor, 19, majoring in psychology. Her roommate Lila Harper, 21, with a camera always hanging around her neck. And Mark Hensley, 22, the quiet one, the one who always drove. They were just 5 friends escaping finals, chasing a weekend of firelight, beer, and stars. They parked Mark's blue Ford pickup at the edge of the Glacier National Forest, unloaded their gear, and hiked 3 miles into the valley. The last photo ever taken showed them smiling in front of the tree line, Lila's camera flash catching Ryan's grin mid-motion. Behind them, untouched forest. Ahead, nothing but silence. It should have been an ordinary trip. It wasn't. The first sign something was off came that night. Megan's diary, later found near her tent, begins with a single line. The forest feels too quiet, like it's listening. Locals would later say the valley they camped in was old land, once owned by a logging company that went bankrupt after a series of accidents. No one had worked those woods since the 50s. The old ranger stations were gone, roads erased by time. But the forest kept its secrets well. That evening they built a fire, opened cheap beer, and talked about their future. Ryan was planning to propose to Megan. Lila joked she'd film it for a documentary. They laughed until the stars came out. Then, the noise. At 11:47 p.m., a low metallic thud echoed from the east ridge. Mark turned his head, flashlight slicing through the trees. The sound came again, deeper, like metal dragging against stone. Caleb joked, "Probably a bear with a wrench." No one laughed. They listened. The noise stopped, but Megan's diary mentioned something else. Something no one could explain. There was light beneath the ground. Faint white, like someone lit a lantern under the soil. By midnight, they decided to check it out. Lila filmed everything, though the footage has never been recovered. The last still frame found on her camera shows their 5 flashlights cutting through the fog. Beams pointed toward the ridge. After that, nothing. 2 days later, a ranger named Douglas Hale found their campsite. The tents were there, sleeping bags open, food still on the table. The fire had burned out naturally. It looked like they had stepped away for a minute and never came back. The search began that afternoon. Helicopters scanned the forest. Dogs were deployed. They found tracks, 5 sets, leading northeast toward a slope known as Hollow Ridge. But halfway up, the prints simply stopped. No slide marks. No backward steps, just nothing. And that's where the fear began to settle in. Hale called in a federal search team. Over the next week, more than 200 people scoured 10 square miles. They found torn fabric snagged on branches, a broken flashlight, and Lila's camera buried in mud. When they developed the last few frames, The photos were dark, almost all black. But image analysis years later revealed faint outlines. A cabin, wooden walls, lantern light spilling through cracks. But that cabin didn't exist. Not on any map, not in any ranger record. By July, the official investigation closed. Presumed lost due to exposure or accident. But the locals never believed it. Old hikers spoke about hearing voices near Hollow Ridge, echoing after dusk. One trapper swore he saw 5 figures walking single file across the slope during a snowstorm, then vanish into thin air. For 25 years, the forest remained silent. Until the drought came. You try to picture it. Summer of 2008. A logging truck taking a detour down an old service road suddenly stops. The driver radios for help, voice shaking. Ground just opened up. When authorities arrive, they find a sinkhole nearly 20 feet wide, 30 feet deep. At the bottom, wooden beams, hand-cut, weathered old. When rescue teams climb down, they find walls, a floor, a door, and on the door, carved with a knife, Cabin 1983. Inside, the air was dry. The temperature steady. Dust covered everything, yet the wood looked recently cut. A table, 5 chairs, 5 mugs still sitting on top, one tipped over, leaving a dried brown stain that looked eerily like coffee. But the strangest thing wasn't what was there. It was what wasn't: no windows, no stairs, no way in or out except the one door they'd just broken through. And in the corner, a tape recorder. Battery corroded, label worn off. When forensic technicians managed to power it on, it played only static. Then faintly beneath the noise, voices, 5 of them. Laughter, then a knock. 3 slow knocks and a woman's voice. Soft, distant, almost pleading. If you find this, don't dig. The recording ends. You can't help but wonder what really happened that night. 5 young friends gone without a trace, only to be found in a place they couldn't possibly have built. The official explanation called it an underground collapse, claiming the cabin was a remnant of old mining operations. But miners don't leave mugs on tables. They don't carve years into doors. And yet, radiocarbon dating confirmed the wood was cut in 1983. So who built it, and why was it buried? No one ever answered. But investigators who entered that cabin spoke of something else. Something that didn't make it into the reports. A feeling, like the air itself was watching, waiting. And one of them, a rookie deputy, refused to go back underground again. He told his partner, "I swear I heard breathing down there." But it wasn't ours. The next morning, the site collapsed. The cabin, the hole, everything, gone beneath tons of dirt and rock. All that remains today are fragments. A mug, a nail, a piece of cloth, and a camera lens cracked right through the middle. No one knows what became of the 5. Some say they got lost, starved, and went mad. Others believe they found something or someone they weren't supposed to. Still, the sheriff of Flathead County visits the ridge every June 18th. He leaves 5 lanterns in a row and whispers, "You can come home now." The forest never answers, but on quiet nights, hikers swear they see light beneath the ground, faint, steady, pulsing like a heartbeat. And sometimes, if you stand still enough, you can hear the knocking too. 3 slow knocks, always 3. What if the cabin wasn't built by them? But for them, morning came quietly over the Montana ridge, painting the trees in a dull gold that seemed almost cruel against what had been lost. The forest was still, save for the distant whine of helicopter blades. By then, the story of the 5 missing campers had already spread beyond the valley, a whisper that carried through every radio station in the state. 5 college kids gone without a trace. Sheriff Alan Crow stood by the abandoned campsite, hands in his pockets, his boots sunk into the damp soil. He'd seen disappearances before. Hunters lost in snow, hikers swept away by floods. But this was different. This place didn't feel like a scene of panic or flight. It felt paused, as if someone had pressed stop and walked away. The tents were zipped open neatly. A skillet still sat on a makeshift stove. Beer cans were arranged in a circle, labels facing outward. The strangest part, 5 sleeping bags side by side perfectly aligned. Crow noted that kind of symmetry didn't happen naturally in panic. It was the kind of thing you did deliberately, or under instruction. He glanced toward the tree line where the ranger Douglas Hale waited. Hale looked pale, the way people look when they've seen something they can't explain but don't want to admit. "Dogs won't track," he muttered when Crow approached. They followed the scent for about 50 yards up the slope, then just stopped like it's gone. Crow frowned. "Gone where?" Hale shook his head. "Nowhere. Just gone." By noon, 30 volunteers had arrived. They combed the area in tight grids, shouting the campers' names into the forest. The sound bounced off the trees and came back softer, as if the forest was swallowing it. One of the searchers, a young deputy named Mason, pointed to the ground. "Sheriff, look at this." In the dirt near the creek bed lay 5 footprints, deep, distinct, human. They led up the slope, but 20 feet later they vanished. Not faded, not washed out, simply ended like the people who made them had evaporated. Crow knelt and touched the soil. It was firm, dry, no signs of sliding or sinking. He looked up toward the ridge. The silence pressed in, thick and unbroken. That night, campfires flickered through the valley as the search team set up a base. The sheriff stayed awake, staring at the dark silhouette of the trees. Somewhere out there, 5 kids were either lost, dead, or hiding. He didn't know which possibility scared him more. At 3:17 a.m., one of the deputies reported hearing movement, faint voices calling from the northern ridge. They scrambled toward the sound, flashlights swinging, hearts hammering. The closer they got, the clearer the voices became. A girl's voice first, then a man's, then laughter. They burst through the trees and found nothing. The voices stopped instantly, replaced by the sound of wind threading through the pines. One deputy swore he saw a flicker of light under the ground, no brighter than a candle pulsing once, twice, 3 times, then gone. By morning, the forest felt heavier. The dogs refused to move past a certain point. Compasses spun aimlessly. Radios hissed with static, cutting in and out with fragments of words that no one said. When Crow reviewed the search footage later, he noticed something no one remembered seeing in person. A small, wooden cross standing behind the main campsite, half buried in moss. Etched into it was a date, June 18, 1983, the very day the campers arrived. No one could explain it. Days passed. The media came and went, hungry for closure. Crow gave statements he didn't believe. "We're confident we'll find them soon." But at night he'd sit alone in his truck, listening to the tape they'd recovered from the cabin weeks later. The faint laughter, the knocking, the voice whispering, "Don't dig." He hadn't told the press about the tape. He wasn't sure he should tell anyone. On the 6th day, the forest gave something back. A hiker found a small object wedged between 2 rocks near Hollow Ridge. A silver locket engraved with an M. Inside, a faded photograph of Ryan and Megan smiling on campus. The edges of the photo were damp, but the metal was clean, polished as if someone had been holding it recently. Forensics couldn't explain that either. The following week, weather turned brutal. Cold rain lashed through the valley, washing away tracks, softening ground, closing the forest like a curtain. The search scaled back, then stopped entirely. Officially, the case became another wilderness tragedy. Unofficially, no one in town went near Hollow Ridge after dark. Months later, a trapper claimed he'd seen something on the ridge, a light flickering beneath the soil. It wasn't lightning, he told a local paper. It was steady, and it was calling. By then, Crow had started dreaming about the cabin. He'd wake up sweating, the sound of knocking still in his ears. He'd tell himself it was just guilt, just exhaustion. But sometimes when he visited the site, he'd find the soil sunken slightly, like something below was moving. 25 years passed. Crow retired. The forest changed. Roads closed. Time eroded everything except memory. And memory, as he'd learned, doesn't rot as easily as wood. Then came the drought. In June of 2008, the region saw its driest season in half a century. Lakes shrank, rivers cracked, and Hollow Ridge began to crumble. One afternoon, a logging truck veered off the road to avoid a sinkhole, a crater that had opened right where the campers' prints had ended. When rescue crews arrived, they expected a cave-in, maybe old mining debris. Instead, their flashlights caught a glimpse of smooth, hand-hewn beams. It wasn't a mine. It was a room. By the time Crow, now gray-haired, long-retired arm arrived, the area was sealed off. Federal agents, environmental inspectors, men in suits who didn't belong to any local department. He watched from a distance as they lowered floodlights into the pit. The beams revealed walls, a table, chairs, and on the table 5 plates arranged in a perfect circle. No one said the word cabin, but everyone knew. Later that night, a state worker snuck Crow a photograph taken at the scene, grainy, low light, colors muted. Still, the image was unmistakable, carved into the doorframe. A single inscription, Cabin 1983. Crow stared at it for hours. If the wood had really been buried since '83, there was no way it could have survived intact. It should have rotted, collapsed, become part of the earth, and yet the walls looked new, the edges sharp, as though it had been built last week. Tests confirmed the impossible. The timber came from trees cut in 1983. The nails were modern steel. The dust inside contained human skin cells, 5 genetic profiles, all matching the missing campers. They hadn't died elsewhere and been brought here. They had been here all along. When Crow asked to see the site, officials told him it had collapsed overnight, swallowed by another cave-in. He knew it was a lie. He'd seen the trucks leaving that morning, unmarked, heavy, carrying something wrapped in black plastic. A month later, he received a package with no return address. Inside was a single cassette tape, unmarked except for a handwritten number. 5. The audio began with static. Then faintly, the sound of wood creaking, footsteps pacing, someone breathing. Then a male voice whispered, "We finished it." A woman answered, trembling, "You said it'd keep them out." And the man again, "No, I said it'd keep them in." The tape ended with 3 slow knocks. Crow didn't sleep that night. Sometimes, he told himself, people disappear because they choose to escape, to start over, to vanish from a life too heavy to carry. But other times the world chooses for them. Places choose. The forest chooses, and sometimes what it keeps forever. You imagine the descent, the cold rush of air rising from the hole, the way light bends differently underground, the rescue team's ropes creaking, their flashlights cutting through layers of dust older than memory. It smells of cedar and ash and something else, something faintly human. They lower themselves into what appears to be a small hand-dug tunnel. At first it looks ordinary, if not for how clean the edges are. Smooth, measured, almost architectural. Someone built this place with purpose. The first man down is Lieutenant Hayes, a structural specialist. His boots hit the wooden floor with a hollow sound. "It's stable," he calls up. No sign of collapse. He turns in slow circles, scanning with his beam. What he sees doesn't make sense. It's a single room, roughly 20 by 20 feet. The walls are made of pine logs, hand-cut, bound tight by wooden dowels. Everything about the structure says 1980s craftsmanship. Yet the air feels new, untouched. A table stands in the center. 5 chairs around it. Dust thick on the surface except for 5 circular outlines, where plates once sat. On the far wall, something gleams faintly. Hayes moves closer. A lantern hangs from a nail, the wick burned black but intact. Below it, a photograph tacked to the wall with a small pin. 5 smiling faces. The campers. The picture is identical to the one the police recovered from their belongings in 1983, except for one detail. In this version, they're sitting inside a cabin. This cabin. When Hayes radios that in, no one responds for a full 10 seconds. Then the sheriff's voice, quiet, disbelieving. Say again? Hayes swallows hard. Sir, the same photo, but they're older. He holds the picture up to his flashlight. Their faces subtly different. Sharper features, longer hair, the eyes less carefree. They're aged maybe 5 years, but that's impossible. The photograph was developed 2 days after the campers disappeared. Behind Hayes, one of the team members steps backward, tripping over something on the floor. When his flashlight tilts down, it catches the edge of a small wooden box beneath the table. He bends, lifts it carefully. The lid creaks open. Inside, 5 identical wristbands engraved with names: Ryan, Megan, Lila, Caleb, Mark. The metal is clean, polished, no corrosion. Hayes sets them down, uneasy. Whoever built this place, they expected to stay a while. Then comes the noise, a faint rhythm, low, dull, almost imperceptible at first. Thud, thud, thud. Everyone freezes. Hayes sweeps his light toward the sound. It's coming from the floor. He kneels, presses his palm against the wood. It's vibrating slightly. The knocking continues, slow and steady, like something beneath the boards trying to signal back. Could be groundwater, someone mutters. But Hayes shakes his head. Water doesn't knock 3 times. He pries up a floorboard. Beneath it, in blackness. Not soil, not rock. Empty space. He lowers his flashlight. The beam doesn't hit bottom, just air and shadows and what looks like a door hanging open below. They send a probe down. The line measures 40 feet before touching solid ground. A cavity, big enough for another room, maybe more. The team decides to pull out, wait for reinforcements. But before they can climb, the lantern on the wall flickers, just once. It shouldn't be possible. The wick hasn't burned in decades, and then faintly from somewhere below, a voice. A woman's voice, soft, broken. Don't dig. Every flashlight swings downward. Silence follows, thick and absolute. Then without warning, every beam flickers out. Darkness swallows the cabin whole. Hayes yells for backup, voice muffled by the earth. Radios hiss and fail. In that void, breathing becomes sound. Someone's boot scrapes against the floor. Someone else whispers a prayer. Then the lantern flares again, just for a heartbeat. In its light, the wall looks different. The photograph then gone. The nails that held it bent outward as if something from behind had pushed it free. They retreat fast. Hayes is the last out, climbing the rope with shaking hands. When he looks down, just before reaching the surface, he swears he sees movement in the darkness below. 5 shapes. Standing perfectly still, heads tilted upward. When he blinks, they're gone. The discovery sends shockwaves through the investigation. The site is sealed within 24 hours. The official report labels it unstable terrain hazard. The public never learns what's inside, but rumors travel faster than truth. Locals begin telling stories of lights under the ground, of distant knocking carried through the soil, of laughter echoing from the ridge after midnight. The sheriff dismisses it as hysteria. Yet he keeps returning to one photograph, the one of the cabin interior taken before the collapse. Behind the table, faintly visible in the corner, is a second doorway. Narrow, closed. He zooms in until the pixels blur. On the doorframe, carved shallowly, are words almost erased by dust. Day 41. That number doesn't match any timeline. The campers vanished on day 2 of their trip. So what happened during the 39 days in between? And where did they live long enough to mark it? Forensic teams cross-reference every mining record in the region. Nothing matches. No shafts, no tunnels, no underground dwellings listed within 50 miles. Yet sonar scans pick up irregular voids beneath the valley floor. Chambers arranged in a pattern too geometric to be natural. The FBI takes over. Trucks, generators, tents, the valley glows with artificial light. They dig carefully, methodically, tracing every possible connection. At 11:40 p.m. on the third night, one of the sensors picks up motion underground. Slow, erratic, like footsteps. The operator assumes it's equipment interference. Then the radio crackles. A voice bleeds through, distorted. "You finished it?" The signal cuts out. The next morning, the excavation is halted. The area is classified. Equipment removed. Reports sealed. The sheriff retires quietly soon after. Hayes transfers out of state. Within a year, half the team who entered that cabin resigns or disappears from public record. One is later found in a motel 2 states away, staring at a blank wall, repeating the same 3 words over and over. "We built it." No one knows what he meant. You try to imagine what it must have been like for them. Trapped underground, carving wood by lantern light, the sound of their own fear becoming rhythm. Maybe they thought building the cabin would save them, a shelter against whatever hunted them above. Maybe it did, for a while. But the forest has a way of reclaiming what it loses, and some walls aren't built to keep danger out. They're built to keep it in. Even now, locals say when the wind shifts just right, you can hear hammering from beneath Hollow Ridge. Slow, steady, methodical. As if someone's still working down there, as if the cabin isn't finished yet. You imagine a long fluorescent hallway, the kind that hums with power even when it's empty. At the end of it, a steel door marked simply, Evidence Room 4B. It's where the recordings were kept. After the cabin collapse, agents collected what little survived. Broken boards, rusted nails, a few personal items, and one device buried under debris. An old cassette recorder, its casing cracked but intact. The tape inside was labeled in blue ink. Day 7, the FBI logged it, sealed it, and forgot it. For nearly a year it sat untouched, until a new technician decided to restore the audio. The process took weeks. The tape hissed with static, warped by heat and time. But beneath the noise, voices began to emerge. 5 of them. At first, it's just ordinary conversation. Laughter, the scrape of wood, hammering. You hear someone say, "It's holding up now. We'll finish the roof tomorrow." A woman laughs softly. "Guess we're carpenters now." Then a pause. Then a man whispering, "How long has it been?" Another answers, 6 days. "Maybe 7. The first voice trembles. "No. It's been longer." And then, silence, stretching too long to be natural. When the technician replayed that section, he noticed a faint sound underneath the silence. Rhythmic, like knocking. 3 slow beats, then a pause, then 3 again. He marked it in his notes as possible background interference. But when he increased the gain, something new appeared. A 6th voice, faint, calm, deliberate. "You're building it wrong." The technician froze. He rewound, played it again. Same words, same tone. The problem was, there were only 5 people in that cabin. The rest of the tape is chaos. Shifting noises, overlapping whispers, heavy breathing. At one point, a woman sobs, "It's dark outside." A man answers, "There is no outside." At timestamp 1704, one final phrase, whispered directly into the microphone. "Stop digging." Then static. The FBI redacted the recording, citing psychological contamination risk. Only a few agents ever heard the full version. One of them, a linguistics analyst named Diane Moore, later quit the Bureau entirely. Her resignation note contained only a single sentence. "The voice on that tape knew my name." The public never learned about the recordings. The case file remained sealed until 2010, when a Freedom of Information request forced the Bureau to release fragments. But even those fragments raised questions. Every tape was labeled sequentially. Day 7, Day 12, Day 23.
Day 41. That last one matched the carving on the door found inside the cabin. The FBI transcript for Day 41 reads like a confession written in madness.
Voice 1, male. We built the walls wrong. They don't stop the sound anymore. Voice 2, female. Keep digging. It's safer below. Voice 3. Don't go down there. It's not us anymore. Unknown. Finish it. Then, at the end, faint and clear. Knock, knock, knock. When the technician cleaned up the background frequencies, he found something horrifying. The knocks didn't echo like wood or stone. They had the resonance of lungs. Whatever was making that sound was breathing. 2 months after the tape release, the Bureau's lead investigator, Special Agent Connor Delaney, gave a rare internal statement. His voice, captured in the meeting minutes, is steady but weary. If you ask me what happened in that cabin, I'll tell you. They built something down there. Maybe out of desperation, maybe out of fear, but I don't think they built it alone. He paused, shuffled papers, then added quietly, and I don't think it's finished. The file ends there, but the local sheriff, Crow, now long retired, received one final package at his home that winter. Inside was a small envelope with no return address. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. The image was blurry but recognizable. The interior of a cabin. 5 chairs, a table, and on the wall a new photo pinned beside the old one. In that new photo, the sheriff could see himself, older, grayer. Standing at the edge of the frame, he dropped it instantly. The timestamp on the back read, "Taken, December 2008. But the cabin had collapsed 5 months earlier. You can almost picture him that night, sitting at his kitchen table, staring at the photo under the weak yellow light. The way his hand trembled as he flipped it over again and again, as if a different truth might appear on the 12th look. He told no one, burned the image in his fireplace, but the smell lingered for days. Soon after, neighbors reported seeing lights in his backyard. Soft white orbs floating just above the ground, moving in slow circles. The sheriff died 2 weeks later, heart failure in his sleep. The official report listed it as natural causes, but his daughter swore that when she cleared his desk, she found the same Polaroid pinned beneath the drawer. This time it wasn't burned, and the handwritten note beneath it read, "Don't build below." For years, the recordings were dismissed as hoaxes, degraded audio creating auditory illusions. Yet when independent experts analyzed the tapes in 2014, they discovered something even the FBI missed. The ambient frequencies of the voices didn't match the acoustics of a cabin. The echoes suggested a space much larger, like a hall or tunnel, meaning the cabin was only part of something bigger. Below it, there was more. And whatever those 5 campers were building, they weren't the first. In a 1985 forestry log, researchers found evidence of a similar sinkhole discovered 30 miles away. Same structure, same wood, same faint markings carved into the walls. Day 1. The pattern suggests progression, a sequence. Day 1, Day 41. How many more are buried beneath Montana's soil, and who kept counting after the voices stopped? Sometimes late at night, hikers near Glacier Park say they hear faint hammering echoing through the valley. Others describe low, rhythmic knocks under their tents, spaced perfectly apart. A few claim to have found Polaroids scattered along the trail, overexposed, water-damaged, but always showing the same image. A wooden table, 5 chairs, one tipped over. The locals don't pick them up anymore. They just walk faster, because every time someone touches one, a new set appears the next morning, always closer to town. And on the back, written in fading blue ink, "Keep digging." You think a place like that should stay buried, but the forest doesn't keep promises. By 2013, 5 years after the first cabin collapsed, the drought had returned. Sharper, longer, crueler. Rivers shrank into mud veins and the Hollow Ridge Valley dried to cracked bone. The locals noticed it first. The sound. Not the wind, not the rustling of trees, but hammering. Slow, rhythmic, always 3 beats. No one wanted to admit it. The sheriff's office called it ground expansion noise. Geologists blamed air pockets collapsing under the soil. But those who lived closest said it wasn't coming from below. It was coming from the east, deeper in the forest where the land sloped toward the old creek bed. In October, 2 hikers disappeared in that direction. Their last photo, uploaded to social media at 6:47 p.m., showed the setting sun caught between trees, orange light reflecting off something metallic half buried in the mud. The caption read, "Found another one. They were never seen again." The next morning, rangers followed the coordinates from the post. There, beneath a fallen tree, they found it. A wooden hatch, square and heavy, bolted with rusted hinges. Faint letters carved across the surface. Cabin 1983-2. You picture it. Floodlights surrounding the clearing. Yellow tape fluttering in the wind. The air thick with rain and static electricity. An excavation team arrives led by a new sheriff. Young, ambitious, unaware of the story's weight. He insists it's an old storm shelter. By midnight, they break the lock. The first thing they notice is the temperature. Even in freezing night air, warm breath rises from the opening. Steady, humid, like exhalation. They lower a camera drone inside. The feed crackles, adjusts, focuses. And there it is, another room. Almost identical to the first cabin. Same dimensions, same furniture, except this one isn't covered in dust. The floor is clean. The plates are set, and 5 chairs are already pulled out, as if waiting. On the far wall, fresh carvings mark the wood. Day 83, the feed cuts out. They pull the drone back. But it's damaged, casing dented inward as though pressed by great weight. They replay the footage frame by frame. At timestamp 0:17:03, just before signal loss, a reflection appears on the cabin's back wall. 5 silhouettes standing in the doorway. Still. Watching. The team seals the hatch immediately. The sheriff orders all footage confiscated, but within 24 hours the files leak. The video surfaces online briefly before being taken down. Only one still frame remains, a blurred, grainy, but clear enough to show the impossible. 5 figures. Same height. Same clothes. The same campers who vanished 30 years earlier. By now the story spreads fast. Tabloids, forums, podcasts, all feeding on the legend of the Hollow Ridge cabins. Some call it a hoax. Others call it proof. The FBI reopens the case quietly under a new division. They send a small team in, equipped with thermal imaging and seismic recorders. The data that comes back doesn't fit any known model. The ground under Hollow Ridge hums at a constant frequency, 19 hertz, the resonance often associated with fear responses in humans. It's the same frequency used in classified sonic experiments during the Cold War. Whatever's beneath the forest isn't just echoing, it's emitting. The investigation halts after 2 weeks. The official reason, unstable terrain. The real reason. 3 members of the team report identical dreams of hammering, voices whispering, "Keep digging," and a hand knocking from inside their bedroom walls. One of them, Agent Kellen, begins recording himself at night. On the 5th tape at exactly 2:47 a.m., there's a soft knock followed by breathing. Then his own voice speaking words he swears he never said. It's not the ground that moves. It's what's underneath. The forest grows restless again. In the nearby town of Marion, power failures start, lights flickering 3 times before going out completely. When workers dig to inspect wiring, they find no fault lines. But they do find tunnels, narrow, freshly dug, running parallel to the old creek. Inside one of them, carved into the wall, the same phrase from the tapes, "You're building it wrong." Soon after, construction crews refuse to return. Locals leave town. News crews film the empty streets, the boarded windows, the wind moving through hollow houses. Then, one evening, a family driving past the ridge reports seeing lanterns through the trees, 5 of them, spaced evenly, flickering in the darkness. When police arrive, the lights are gone. But in the dirt near the trailhead, fresh boot prints, 5 pairs, adult size. They follow them for a mile until they end abruptly near the creek, right above where the new cabin was found. By 2016, Hollow Ridge is completely off limits. The land is declared unsafe, fenced, forgotten. But still, strange reports continue. A geologist studying subsurface temperatures records something inexplicable. Heat signatures arranged in a perfect circle 40 feet underground. When he overlays the pattern with the original 1983 site maps, the shapes align perfectly. There isn't one cabin. There are 12, each buried deeper than the last, each one newer than the one above. Each one marked with a higher day count. Day 1, Day 41, Day 83. No one knows what the final number is. You stand there in your mind, at the edge of the ridge, the wind sharp, the world too quiet. You imagine the earth breathing beneath your feet. If you listened hard enough, you might even hear them. The faint tapping, the whisper that sounds like movement, and maybe, just maybe, you'd realize something terrifying. The cabins were never built in the forest. The forest was built around them, and whatever those 5 started in 1983 never stopped. You imagine waking up every night at the same time, 2:47 a.m., not to an alarm but to a sound. 3 soft knocks against your bedroom wall, always 3, always spaced perfectly apart. That's how it began for Claire Donovan. She wasn't an investigator, not a journalist, not even from Montana. She was a clinical psychologist from Boise, Idaho, 41 years old, divorced, living alone with her dog. But one autumn night in 2017, she started hearing the knocking. At first, she thought it was the plumbing, then the neighbors, then the dog, until the night she recorded it. The microphone caught it clearly, the hollow rhythm like knuckles against wood. But what frightened her wasn't the sound itself. It was what came after, a whisper, faint but unmistakable, "You're building it wrong." She hadn't heard those words before, but when she searched them online, one result appeared. An archived news article about the Hollow Ridge vanishings. The phrase matched the FBI transcripts word for word. That's when she drove to Montana. The town of Marion looked like a place that had stopped breathing years ago. Half the shops were closed, windows boarded, streetlights dead. The locals avoided eye contact, their faces drawn tight with that kind of weariness only old secrets bring. Claire rented a room at the only open motel, a narrow 2-story building with peeling green paint. The clerk, a man with gray hair and no name tag, slid the key across the counter and said quietly, "Don't stay out past 9. She smiled awkwardly. "Why, bears?" He looked up. His eyes were pale, almost translucent. "Not bears," he said. "Echoes." That night from her room she could see the tree line in the distance, black shapes against the indigo sky. The ridge was still off limits, fenced, patrolled by unmarked trucks. Yet sometimes faint lights flickered between the trees like lanterns moving in slow procession. She couldn't sleep. At 2:47 a.m. she heard it again. 3 knocks, then silence. When she played the audio back the next morning, she noticed something else layered beneath the sound. Breathing. Not hers. Slow, steady, deliberate. She drove to the sheriff's office. The new sheriff, a younger man named Eric Miles, listened politely as she played the recording. When it ended, he sighed. "Ma'am, I've heard that before. People come here thinking they'll find answers. They leave hearing more knocking." Claire leaned forward. "But you have heard it?" He hesitated. Then quietly, "Yeah, I've heard it." She showed him the article, the one about the cabins, the voices, the disappearances. He nodded once, slow. "My father was on that team." He never talked about it. But he wouldn't go near the woods after. Wouldn't even burn wood in the fireplace. Said it, talked back. Before she left, he gave her something. A small metal pendant on a chain, tarnished but engraved with a single word. "Day," he said. He wore that the night they found the cabin. Said it kept him safe. I don't believe that. But I don't wear it either. That evening, Claire parked at the forest gate. The signs read, "Danger. No entry. Federal property." But she stepped over the fence anyway. The forest was silent. No birds, no insects, only the wind threading through tall, brittle trees. Her flashlight beam caught fragments of old tape, torn fabric, rusted tools, remnants of the original search. She followed the sound of dripping water to the dried creek bed. That's where she found it. A wooden hatch partly unearthed by rain, identical to the one described in the reports. Her breath caught. The markings were faint but visible. Cabin 1983-3. She crouched, tracing her fingers over the letters. The wood was warm, too warm for night air. She pressed her ear against it and froze, knocking. From below, 3 times. Her heart pounded. She whispered, "Hello?" And something whispered back. It wasn't words. Just breathing, close, wet, human. She stumbled back, tripping over roots, flashlight tumbling into the dirt. When she looked up again, the hatch was slightly open, a thin handprint pressed against the underside of the lid. She ran. The next morning, she drove straight to Sheriff Miles. Told him everything. Showed him her phone, the recording, the coordinates. He stared at her for a long time before speaking. "You went out there alone?" "Yes," he rubbed his face. "Then you've already heard it. You won't stop now." "What do you mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened his drawer and pulled out a thick folder labeled Echo Case Files. Inside were dozens of photos, Polaroids black and white, overexposed. Each one showed the same thing. A wooden table, 5 chairs, a lantern. Only in some of them a figure appeared faintly reflected in the lantern glass. Always the same one, a woman. Pale, hair loose, eyes too wide. Claire swallowed hard. "Who is she?" Miles flipped to the last photo. "You," he said. It was impossible, yet the resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same hair, except this photo was dated 2009, 8 years before she ever set foot in Montana. That night, Claire checked out of the motel. Drove until dawn, but no matter how far she went, the knocking followed. In hotel walls, in gas station restrooms, in the quiet of her car when she stopped to breathe. She left the recorder running one last time. When she played it back, she heard the knocks, 3, perfectly timed and followed by her own voice whispering, "It's not them anymore." She doesn't remember saying it. Her car was found abandoned 3 miles south of Hollow Ridge. The driver's door open, headlights still on. In the passenger seat lay the pendant the sheriff had given her. Next to it, her notebook. The final page read only 4 words. Day 124, still building. No one saw her again. They say some places don't take you all at once. They take you in pieces, a sound, a memory, a breath. You fade slowly until one day the forest calls your name, and you follow without realizing you've answered. Hollow Ridge still stands, fenced and forgotten, but on quiet nights hikers claim to see a light moving through the trees. A woman carrying a lantern, her face hidden, her hand tapping the air 3 times as she passes. Some say it's Claire, Still walking, still listening for the knocking. Others say it's not her at all. Just another witness, waiting for you to listen next. You'd think by now the government would have buried it deeper, sealed the reports, scrubbed the coordinates, erased the story. But some truths rot too loudly to stay quiet. After Claire Donovan's disappearance, the federal presence in Montana changed overnight. No more yellow tape, no more signs. The fences around Hollow Ridge were replaced by metal gates with biometric locks. Satellite imagery of the region vanished from public databases. Even Google Earth blurred the area, labeling it restricted terrain. Officially, it was now under environmental protection. Unofficially, it was under surveillance. Residents began receiving quiet visits. Men in unmarked suits asking simple questions. Have you heard knocking? Do you own a tape recorder? Have you seen lights in the woods? Those who said yes never got a second visit. The town of Marion, once home to 2,000 people, dwindled to less than 200. The rest sold their land, moved south, or simply disappeared without forwarding addresses. Within a year, the place was a ghost town. Sheriff Eric Miles stayed, though. He couldn't leave, not after Claire. He'd promised himself he'd find her, or at least find what took her. But every lead ended the same way. Blank files, disconnected phone numbers, erased evidence. Then one morning, he received a call from a restricted number. A man's voice said, "We've been building too long," then hung up. Miles traced the call. It originated less than 2 miles from Hollow Ridge. He grabbed his flashlight, his revolver, and drove. The gate was open when he arrived. No guards, no trucks, just fog, thick, pale, unnatural. It clung to the trees, to his clothes, to his breath. He walked down the trail, the beam of his light barely piercing the mist. Then he saw it, a structure ahead. At first he thought it was one of the old ranger stations. Then he realized what it was, a cabin. Above ground this time, the logs were new. The door was freshly carved. Cabin 1983-4, he called out, "Claire?" No answer. He stepped inside. Everything was identical to the others. The table, the 5 chairs, the lantern, the silence. Except this cabin was lit. The lantern burned with a soft white flame that didn't flicker. On the table, a tape recorder. Running. He pressed stop. Then play at first, only static. Then faint breathing. Then a voice, his own. "Don't build below." He stumbled back, heart pounding. The air thickened, vibrating with that same low hum. The flame on the lantern pulsed 3 times. Tug, tug, tug. He turned toward the door. But the door was gone. Just while the sound of hammering started behind him. Slow, steady, wood bending, nails driving themselves in, he screamed for help. No one answered. By morning, the gate to Hollow Ridge was closed again. The sheriff's cruiser sat empty by the roadside. The engine still warm. No one ever found him. The report that followed was clinical. No emotion, no context. Subject Miles, E., presumed missing during unsanctioned field entry. Terrain instability probable cause. No recovery possible. That line appeared in the declassified version of the Hollow Ridge file, released under public pressure in 2019. Everything else, hundreds of pages, was blacked out. But one paragraph slipped through redaction. It mentioned Operation Daylight, a 1984 project focused on resonance-based containment experiments in subterranean environments. Test locations, classified. Purpose, psychological resonance studies using controlled acoustic fields. The date of cancellation? June 18, 1983. The same weekend the campers vanished. You see the pattern now, don't you? The 5 students weren't just lost. They were involved. Participants may be volunteers or sacrifices. Whatever Operation Daylight began, it didn't end that summer. It went underground, literally. The cabins weren't shelters. They were containment chambers. Each one built deeper than the last to keep something in. But they failed, because the walls keep breathing. The soil keeps moving. The sound never stops. After 2019, Hollow Ridge was erased again, this time completely. The town was condemned. Access roads removed. The last remaining house burned in 2020 under unclear circumstances. No one filed an insurance claim. No one came to rebuild. But satellites still catch flickers of light over that valley. Every June, always 5 lights, 5 shadows, 5 unfinished stories. The locals call it the Builders. And they say if you camp anywhere near Glacier Park on the anniversary night, you'll hear it again, 3 slow knocks in the dark, followed by a voice you almost recognize saying softly, "We're still here." There's an old belief in Montana that silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the sound of everything waiting to be heard, and in Hollow Ridge the silence is deafening. You imagine the forest after everyone's gone. No search parties, no reporters, no flashlights. Just wind moving through hollow trunks, whispering over a place that refuses to be forgotten. The trees have grown taller since 1983, their roots curling through soil that once covered walls, chairs, and bones that were never found. But sometimes, when the air is still enough, the ground hums again. Not loudly, just a pulse, faint, regular, like a heartbeat underfoot. That's when the knocking starts. Always 3. Always from somewhere you can't quite place. For the rest of the country, Hollow Ridge doesn't exist anymore. Officially, it's a conservation zone. No maps, no signs, no roads. But on certain nights in June, hikers still show up on the outskirts, chasing a story they half believe. Some come with cameras, some with recorders. None stay long. One of them, a local filmmaker named Dean Walters, uploaded a short clip to a private forum in 2021. The footage shows a handheld camera moving through dense fog, breathing audible behind the lens. The caption reads simply, "Found the ridge." In the first few seconds, there's nothing but trees and darkness. Then, briefly, a light ahead, steady, low, warm, like a lantern. The beam catches something wooden in the distance. Dean whispers, "Is that a wall?" He steps closer. The camera shakes. The light grows brighter. For half a second, you can see it clearly. The door frame of a cabin. The inscription burned into the wood. Cabin 1983. 5. Then the feed cuts. Authorities later found his car parked 3 miles away, doors locked, engine cold. The camera was never recovered. But that same night, satellite thermal scans of the region captured something extraordinary. A network of rectangular heat signatures stretching for nearly a mile underground. Not one structure, dozens. Each evenly spaced, each glowing faintly like embers. Experts said it was geological, a natural heat pocket. But natural things don't form perfect lines. No one could explain why the pattern pulsed every 41 seconds. A private investigator later claimed to have intercepted a government transmission from the site. A brief audio burst labeled OP Daylight, Field Channel 12. In it, a man's voice says, "Containment breach confirmed, subject still active. Initiate layer 6. Then silence followed by faint hammering. The file disappeared within hours. There's a theory that keeps resurfacing among those who still study the case, that the cabins weren't meant to trap people, but to trap something they found, something that needed human hands to stay buried. When the 5 campers vanished, the first chamber sealed itself. When Claire returned, another opened. When the sheriff stepped inside, the next one began. Each new disappearance building on the last, one layer at a time. It's not a curse, it's construction, and the builders never stopped. If you map the missing persons over the years, the coordinates form a spiral, not random, not chaotic, but deliberate. The center of that spiral sits exactly where the first cabin was found in 2008. Beneath that spot, seismic sensors still record movement. Regular, rhythmic, like hammering. Some say the 5 original campers are still alive, not as they were, but as part of what they built. That their laughter, their voices, their footsteps echo because they became the echo. Others think they never existed at all. That Operation Daylight created them as a story, a disguise for something much larger beneath the soil. Whichever version you believe, the truth hides underground, breathing slow, patient breaths. Last year, a survey drone accidentally flew over restricted airspace above Hollow Ridge. For 3 seconds before the feed cut, it recorded something that shouldn't have been there. 5 bright shapes in a clearing, moving in perfect sync, carrying lumber toward a structure that cast no shadow. The footage was taken at 2:47 a.m. At the same time, Claire always heard the knocking. The timestamp on the drone read, Day 166. The number keeps climbing. Now you sit here, watching, listening. You can almost feel it beneath you. The rhythm, the vibration, the quiet insistence of something unfinished. Maybe that's why you can't look away. Maybe that's why stories like this one linger long after they end. Because they're not really stories. They're warnings. You wonder what happens when the building stops. When there are no more days to count. When the final cabin is finished. What does it hold? Who will it be for? Maybe that's what the forest has been waiting for all along. Not for someone to find it, but for someone to take their place. And maybe that someone is you. Because even now, if you listen closely, wherever you are, you can hear it. The faint echo beneath the floor, steady and patient. Talk, talk, talk. It's always 3, and it never stops. Some stories were never meant to stay buried. Don't let them vanish. Keep them alive with us.